All right, I need to get started here. It has already been a very long work day, a very long night. Um, anyways, I was sitting here going over my Leo inner and outer, masculine and feminine, how I'm going to write this video out. So I've been working on that for the last couple of hours, and I was sitting here getting into my zone, listening to music. I put on Roy Jones' Can't Be Touched, and I'm like, man, he sounds like a Leo. He's a boxer. I just love the music and I love the mentality. Can't be moved, can't be rocked. Anyways, I'm sitting here thinking my family really lacks Leo energy. My grandmother practically raised me and she is a Leo, but her Mercury is in Virgo. And I'm sitting here trying to think of any other Leos I know. There are probably 6 total, not very many Leos in my family, Leo energy around me. I have a lot of Aries energy, Libra energy, Scorpio. It's just fascinating. So anyways, yeah, certainly. So I'll dedicate this video to my grandmother, Leo. She was very hardcore Catholic. I was raised private Catholic schooling. She was a very, very religious, very spiritual woman, absolutely amazing, a huge heart. Love her to pieces. Very, very good soul. So she certainly, I have her heart and soul by far. Anyway, so most people misunderstand Leo. They think Leo is confidence. They think Leo is attention. They think Leo is performance. But that's not what Leo is. Leo is what happens when identity becomes your survival system. And that means if identity breaks, everything breaks. So I am going to be talking about Leo today. Here's the key card. I'm going to be bringing up 2 key cards, the inner and outer, masculine and feminine. I'm going to leave that on screen. I'll try to scoot over so you can still see me. So yeah, this is going to finally be the video where I break down Leo's inner and outer, masculine and feminine. I combine astrology and psychology together. So Leo is what happens when identity becomes your survival system. And that means if identity breaks, everything breaks because Leo does not stabilize through silence. Leo stabilizes through being seen. So the real question is not what is Leo? The real question is who are you when no one is watching? So, do a little introduction. So, before we get started, my name is Heather with Underwater Panther. I am 2 subscribers away from low tier monetization, 500 subscribers, and I don't even remember, 9,000 or something crazy hours of watch time. I have literally been sitting here watching, I'll fall asleep to watching my own videos to help bump up the hours. It's crazy. YouTube is insane. I've been doing this for a decade. I have been working on this channel and this Astro-Psychology for a decade. So this is a serious hard grind. Please like and subscribe. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. I have 35 books written. Some are 500 pages, some are 200, some are 100. I'm currently working on a 700-page book through my moral cognitive series. This has been the most challenging video series and book series I have ever written. So I'm really taking it up a notch. I am just challenging myself to the max. So anyways, my name is Heather with Underwater Panther. And what I do on this channel is I am building out a system that most people have never seen mapped this clearly. I'm not just talking about astrology. I'm not just talking about personality. And I'm not just talking about psychology. I'm combining archetypes, cognitive functions. So I'm going to bring this up really quick because it is important. All right, so I'm combining archetypes, cognitive functions, planetary imprints, masculine and feminine polarity, and what I call moral load bearing architecture to explain something deeper: how identity actually forms, how it distorts, and how it either stabilizes or collapses under pressure. So, this video is one of the most important ones in the entire series. Because Leo is not just personality, Leo is what happens when identity becomes your survival system. And when identity is your survival system, everything changes. So I spent a long time breaking this down across different signs, different functions, and different polarity axes. And what I started to see is that most people are only looking at, sorry, it's been a really long night, surface traits. They're looking at behavior, they're looking at stereotypes, but they're not looking at the nervous system, the regulation pattern, the internal architecture driving everything. And that is what I'm doing here. So, Leo, the internal architecture of Leo. So, this is extremely fascinating. I have been combining many, many different systems together. I am an Aquarius, 11th house, Mercury, Aries rising, mostly 85% Capricorn, ISTJ, so OCD heaven. My Neptune, believe it or not, is in Capricorn. So, anywho, Pisces, Venus, North Node, and Sun. So, that is my little secret. That is my secret. Anywho, so what you're looking at, I used to just combine astrology and psychology. Now I've been fascinated with masculine and feminine polarity for a very long time. I'm extremely masculine myself, so I'm heavily invested in this topic. I was trying to understand why. So Leo is number 4 masculine on my masculine to feminine ranking. So I'm combining that system with moral load bearing under pressure. And so we're starting to look inside of the personality and breaking down not only astrology and psychology, but also the inner and outer masculine and feminine. So each of these 4 boxes you're looking at encompasses the whole personality or archetype. So astrologically, you have the sun ruling Leo. You have Pluto in exaltation, Saturn co-Uranus in left field, and Neptune co-Mercury in fall for Leo. The ESFP, you have psychology. So you have extroverted sensing or SE hero, FI parent or introverted feeling, extroverted thinking TE child, and introverted intuition or NI inferior psychologically. Now, the inner and outer masculine, we are going to be breaking that down pretty deeply. So I just want to briefly go over that now. I had that lined up so perfect and I just had to move it. Okay, hopefully I just had to move it. That should be good. It might be too big now. I had that perfect. I was sitting here struggling before I turned the video on. All right, so the outer masculine for Leo. So we have a healthy developmental order, which you can find at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to keep it up. So the correct healthy integration order for inner and outer masculine is outer feminine, inner masculine, outer masculine. So that's perception, safety, values, and action. Every single archetype goes through a distorted, regardless, personality development, psychological development, mental and emotional, spiritual. It's a lifelong endeavor. So each archetype has their own hero's journey to go through and integrate. We all have to start somewhere. So Leo, their distortion order, developmental order for the inner and outer feminine is outer masculine with SE hero and sun, inner masculine with FI parent and Pluto, outer feminine with TE child, Saturn, and Uranus, and inner feminine with NI, inferior, Neptune, and Mercury. So I will be breaking this down in depth in this video. All right, getting back to my introduction here. All right, so most people are only looking at surface traits. So they're looking at behavior, stereotypes, but they're not looking at the nervous system, the regulation pattern, and the internal architecture driving everything. And that's what we are doing here. So this is not a short video. This is a deep dive. We're going to break down Leo, or the ESFP, into all 4 quadrants: cognitive functions, planetary imprints, distortion patterns. I will be going over the male and female psychology in each quadrant as well as overall, and how this develops across your entire life through ages. And by the end of this, you're not just going to understand Leo, you're going to understand identity itself. And more importantly, you're going to see something most people never see: where Leo breaks, why it breaks, and what it actually takes to rebuild it correctly. So with that, let's start at the beginning, not with identity, but with visibility, because Leo doesn't begin by asking, who am I? Leo begins by asking, am I being seen? All right, so I'm going to keep this up from here on out. I feel like this is just oops, gosh darn it. Not quite big enough. There we go. That seems better. All right. So there are 4 layers to Leo, or the ESFP. 4 quadrants, and each one answers a different question. So outer masculine, SE hero and sun, am I being seen? Inner masculine with FI parent and Pluto, is this even me? Outer feminine with TE child, Saturn, and Uranus, can I make this real? And inner feminine with NI inferior, Neptune, and Mercury, what does this become over time? Most Leos master the first, some reach the second quadrant, very few stabilize the third, almost none face the fourth. What does this become over time? And that's why Leo is one of the most powerful and most misunderstood archetypes. We start where Leo starts, not internally, not reflectively, but externally with visibility. All right, so that was literally my introduction. 13 minutes. That just seems to be the new timestamp for my introductions. I totally got sidetracked there for a minute too. All right, drink break. Okay. All right, so Leo is not just expression. Leo is identity under pressure. This archetype does not stabilize through silence, withdrawal, or internal reflection the way many others do. Leo does not regulate by pulling away from reality. It regulates by moving into it, by becoming visible within it, by placing identity directly into the environment and allowing it to be witnessed. Where other archetypes retreat to find themselves, Leo steps forward. The Leo nervous system stabilizes through being seen. This is not superficial, and it is not about attention in the shallow sense people often assume. It is much deeper than that. For Leo, visibility is tied directly to existence and coherence. Sorry, I'm a little chilly. I'm going to have to turn that towards my computer. My hands are going to freeze. It's literally probably 15 degrees right now. Freezing. So yes, you'll see my dragon breath throughout the video. All right, so this is not superficial, and it is not about attention in the shallow sense people often assume. It is much deeper than that. For Leo, visibility is tied directly to existence and coherence. When identity is expressed and reflected back, the system organizes. When it is not, something begins to fragment internally. Leo regulates their nervous system through radiance. Hello, sunshine. Good morning, sunshine. That was my grandmother. Oh my God. I'm an Aquarius, Mercury, Pisces sun. Let me sleep. Don't rip the blinds open. I'm not exactly a mad morning person, but I'm not a morning person. It takes me a while to get my gears going. Grandmother Mary Ann, I'm Heather Ann. Marianne, she would rip my curtains open every morning and say, "Good morning, sunshine." And I'm just like, no, please, no. Leo energy. I'm sorry. I just had a moment. I had to. She's the reason why I do these videos and believe in myself. Thank you, Leo. All right. So, radiance means the energy is moving outward. It is expressive, warm, and generative. It does not collide with the world. It illuminates it. And because of that, Leo does not process pressure by releasing it like Aries does. Leo processes pressure by turning it into identity and projecting that identity outward. Where Aries discharges pressure through action, Leo stabilizes pressure through identity expression and recognition. The difference alone creates an entirely separate survival strategy. Aries survives by moving, Leo survives by becoming. Aries proves existence through impact, Leo proves existence through identity. And because of this, Leo lives in a constant, often invisible tension between two internal states: authentic identity versus performance identity. This is the central axis of the Leo experience. At first, expression is real, it is natural, spontaneous, and aligned. But over time, as the environment responds, reflects, rewards, and rejects different aspects of that identity, the psyche begins to adapt. It begins to notice what gets attention, what gets admiration, what gets approval. And slowly, without realizing it, identity can begin to shift. This is where the tension forms. The question is no longer just am I? It becomes which version of me is most seen. Everything in the Leo archetype revolves around this line, the line between being and performing. So, the Leo survival order core mechanism. Leo operates through a very specific internal sequence: express, impress, understand, reflect. And the most important part of this sequence is what comes last. So, okay, express, impress, understand, reflect. Okay, so I do have that written under Leo ESFP Radiance Survival Order on your key card to the, I think, left. Everything is like backwards when you're filming. It's really wild. I think it's on the left side of your screen. Don't hold me to it, I suppose. But yeah, so you'll find that under that, and the nervous system regulates through identity expression and recognition. So it's really nice to have that key card up while I'm explaining this because it's a crap ton of information being thrown at you. So I'm just trying to make it coherent and organized. All right. So the most important part of this sequence is what comes last. Awareness comes last, NI inferior. This is critical to understand because it explains almost every behavior, strength, and distortion in the Leo archetype. Leo does not begin with introspection. Leo begins with projection. They do not sit back and analyze themselves before acting. They move outward first. They express first. They step into the environment and become visible. And only after that do they begin to understand what they are doing and why. I already need a drink break. Oops, I just flicked water all over the place. And I'm spilling it all over the place. Got it on my computer. Oh my gosh. Hot mess night. All right, I probably just lost my mouse. All right, so they discover themselves after they express themselves. This creates a very unique developmental pattern. Early in life, Leo often appears naturally confident, expressive, and self-assured. They seem comfortable being seen. They seem like they know who they are. But what is actually happening is something different. They're not starting from a fully formed identity. They're forming identity in real time through expression. Because awareness comes later, Leo often does not fully understand themselves until after years of expressing, performing, leading, creating, and being reflected by others. This is why Leo can appear strong early, but go through deep identity crisis later. Hello, Pluto and FI parents. At some point, the system catches up to itself, and the question emerges: is this actually me, or is this who I learned to be? That moment is the beginning of true Leo development. So, the 4 quadrants overview. Okay, so the Leo psyche is not simple. It is structured, layered, and developmental. It operates across 4 primary quadrants, each governing a different aspect of identity formation, expression, and integration. So the outer masculine quadrant is SE paired with the sun. This is where identity is projected outward. This is the visible Leo, the performer, the leader, the presence in the room. This is how Leo meets reality through expression, charisma, and embodied identity. And then we have the inner masculine quadrant with FI parent paired with Pluto. This is where identity is actually formed. This is the internal core. The values, the emotional truth, the sense of who I am beneath the performance. This is where Leo either becomes authentic or fractures. The outer feminine quadrant with TE child, Saturn, and Uranus organizes identity into the external world. This is where Leo learns to structure, lead, execute, and build systems around their identity. It translates expression into impact. So I'm getting this sense. I just had this like feeling of this is like Leo's pushing out their sun, their outer masculine, your SE hero and sun, outer masculine, TE child, and Saturn and Uranus. That is the outer feminine. So we have outer masculine and outer feminine pushing outward externally. They're extroverted, they're a fire element. And it's like a very warm, it is a really actual feminine, warm, they check in with you, they'll help you with your schedule. Saturn, TE, helping you organize. Yeah, I always thought that that was more of like my grandmother's Mercury and Virgo, but now I'm actually starting to sense the TE organization, the outer feminine. They're pushing that warmth outer in an outward way, like in a feminine, nurturing. I just love the energy. And my grandmother had a stroke almost 9 years ago. And so she raised me. I grew up with that energy, and don't know very many Leos. And so I really, truly miss that energy on so many different levels. It's beautiful. I love it. It's very warm and caring and nurturing people's identity and creativity. It's beautiful. Love it. All right, sorry. Totally got sidetracked. I just got overwhelmed with like this hitting me on like a very personal level with my grandmother. I'm like, wow, I actually really feel this. Every time I look at the key cards and do these presentations, I mean, I'm learning with you as well, and it's just so fascinating. I can really truly feel, I see patterns, and I just truly love to try to understand other people. And it's just like, this stuff hits on the deepest level. I don't know anyone else doing this type of work, and it hits. It really hits. So, all right. So that was the outer feminine quadrant. The inner feminine quadrant, NI inferior with Neptune and Mercury, governs reflection, foresight, and meaning over time. This is the most difficult layer. It asks Leo to step back and question everything, where their identity is going, what patterns are repeating, and what is real versus imagined. Each of these quadrants develops at different stages of life. And when they are not integrated properly, when one dominates and the others are underdeveloped, Leo collapses into predictable patterns. Performance instead of authenticity, validation loops instead of self-stability, and identity instability instead of internal coherence. The entire Leo journey is about bringing these quadrants into alignment. So, SE Hero's Sun, identity through presence. Leo doesn't enter a room quietly, even when they say nothing. They are felt, heartfelt, because SE doesn't observe reality and it engages it. And when you pair it with the Sun, you don't just get interaction, you get identity radiating outward. So when this is healthy, Leo feels alive, energized, expressive, confident, and connected. But when it's not, they feel invisible. And for Leo, invisibility is not neutral. It feels like non-existence. I need a different song. Heck yeah. I'm on my old boxing. I used to get into MMA and boxing and bodybuilding for 15 years. I took it hardcore. So there are certain songs to this day that I hear that I trained like crazy. I trained like crazy. Like I literally did a physique competition, like got ready for one, and I was cut up, shredded. I got gangster in me. Like, I'm sorry. That just happens to be my playlist this evening, and I'm loving it. All right, so outer masculine, SE hero, and sun, ruling sun. I exist because I am seen. This is where Leo begins. Before identity is fully formed internally, before reflection, before long term awareness, Leo enters the world through outer masculine expression. This quadrant is the entry point into reality. It is how Leo makes contact with the external world, and that contact is not quiet, subtle, or withdrawn. It is visible. Leo does not approach reality cautiously. They step into it with presence. And that presence is not always loud, but it is always felt. There is a radiance to it, a projection, a sense that something is being expressed outward even when no words are spoken. This is the SE hero paired with Sun. SE does not sit back and observe. It engages directly with the environment. It interacts, responds, and moves through reality in real time. It is grounded in the present moment, fully immersed in what is happening. When you combine that with the Sun, the center of identity, you get something very specific. Identity expressed through presence. Leo does not need to tell you who they are. They show you. They embody it. They perform it, not necessarily in a theatrical sense, but in the sense that their identity is lived outwardly in real time. Even when they are quiet, they are still projecting something. Their nervous system is constantly scanning for one thing. Am I being seen right now? And deeper than that, is what I'm expressing actually being received? Because for Leo, expression without reception can feel incomplete. So, planetary imprint, sun. Okay. The sun does not behave like Mars. Mars collides, pushes, and reacts. The sun radiates. It emits energy continuously without asking permission, without waiting for the environment to respond first. It simply shines. This is why Leo's outer masculine is not about force, it is about presence, dominance. They are not trying to overpower the room, they are becoming the center of it through existence and expression. This is very subtle but powerful. Leo does not need to push themselves forward when healthy. They are naturally drawn. They naturally draw attention because their identity is coherent and visible. But when distorted, the same mechanism becomes forced. Instead of radiating, they begin reaching. Instead of shining, they begin seeking. And this is where instability begins. How it feels internally. When this quadrant is healthy, Leo feels energized simply by being able to express themselves. This is a sense of aliveness that comes from interaction, from visibility, from engaging with the world in a way that allows their identity to move forward. They feel confident not because they are constantly affirmed, but because expression itself is enough. Being seen becomes a natural byproduct, not a requirement. There is warmth, there is flow, there is a sense that I can be myself, and this is enough. But when this quadrant is suppressed or distorted, the experience shifts dramatically. Leo begins to feel invisible. And invisibility for this archetype is destabilizing. Without expression, they begin to lose connection to themselves. Energy drops, confidence drops, identity becomes unclear. There's a sense of disorientation, not knowing who they are or how they are being perceived, because without expression, they cannot fully locate themselves. And this is where something subtle begins, because the nervous system starts noticing what gets the strongest reaction, and then expression shifts from truth to strategy. So this is where performance is born, not as something fake, but as something optimized. And the moment identity becomes optimized, it is no longer stable. Leo doesn't just express identity, Leo learns to perform it. So distortion with performance identity. So this is where the shift begins. At the beginning, Leo expresses naturally. There's no strategy, there's no calculation. Identity flows outward in an authentic way, getting tongue-tied. But over time, the environment begins to respond. Certain traits are rewarded, certain expressions receive more attention, certain versions of the self are more accepted, admired, or validated. And the nervous system starts tracking that, not consciously at first, but biologically. It begins to learn this version of me gets the strongest reaction. And slowly, expression begins to change. It becomes more refined, more targeted, more optimized. And this is the moment where identity begins to shift from truth to strategy. Leo is no longer just expressing who they are expressing what works. This creates persona, not fake at first, but curated, then reinforced, then depended on. Eventually, identity becomes something that must be maintained, not discovered. And this is where the distortion locks in. So I want to talk about the Leo collapse pattern when identity becomes performance. At the center of the Leo archetype sits the sun, the astronomical body around which the entire solar system organizes itself. Astrologically and psychologically, the sun represents identity coherence, the organizing principle that gives a human life direction, vitality, and continuity. For Leo individuals, identity is not simply a private internal state. It is something that must be expressed, projected, and lived visibly in the world. The nervous system of Leo regulates itself through radiance. Expression becomes stabilization. When Leo expresses identity outwardly through creativity, humor, charisma, leadership, or emotional presence, internal pressure dissipates. The psyche feels aligned because the inner self and the outer environment are in harmony. However, this regulatory system contains a subtle vulnerability. Because Leo's identity is expressed outwardly, the environment inevitably becomes part of the feedback loop that stabilizes that identity. When expression is met with recognition, laughter, appreciation, admiration, or emotional engagement, the nervous system relaxes. I gotta change this song, it's terrible. All right. It's just that song was not jiving. All right. Recognition confirms that identity being expressed is seen and received by the world. In healthy development, this creates confidence, generosity, and radiant presence. Leo becomes a stabilizing emotional center within social environments. But if recognition becomes the primary stabilization mechanism, a distortion slowly begins forming. The psyche gradually learns that emotional equilibrium depends on external validation rather than internal coherence. Instead of expressing identity because it is authentic, the individual begins expressing identity because it produces recognition. Expression slowly transforms into performance. At this stage, Leo begins unconsciously adapting identity to environmental expectations. The nervous system begins asking a new question beneath awareness. What version of myself receives the most recognition? Instead of radiating identity naturally, the psyche begins managing identity strategically. Certain traits are amplified because they generate applause. Other traits are suppressed because they do not receive the same response. So that is a lot of that TE child, Uranus, and Saturn pushing out through the sun. Other traits are suppressed because they do not receive the same responses. The individual becomes highly skilled at reading what the environment rewards and performing accordingly. From the outside, this can look like confidence and charisma. Leo may appear magnetic, entertaining, or socially dominant, but internally, the center of gravity has shifted. Identity is no longer grounded internally, it is orbiting around recognition. This creates the Leo collapse pattern because performance requires constant energy. Maintaining a persona is psychologically exhausting. Eventually, the nervous system reaches saturation. The individual begins to feel disconnected from the persona they created. The applause still exists, but the identity being applauded no longer feels authentic. The person may suddenly experience a strange internal question. I need a drink already, sorry. Yep, felt that coming on. Give me a moment. Sorry, I get allergy attacks. My nose is going crazy right now. I need some medicine. Give me a moment. I have an emergency. I'm allergic to work, is what I say. Blue collar job ain't for me. Holy crap, I'm not gonna make it. All right. I need to get that under control. Sorry about that. I did that one other time and I can't remember what video it was in. Oh my goodness gracious. My nose starts running and my throat gets really scratchy. All right, so I might have to actually and plus it's like 15 degrees out here. Sorry, I did not mean to cough in the mic. All right. I'm gonna keep this gum in my mouth for a moment. All right, so where was I? All right, so although uncomfortable, the collapse often becomes the beginning of a deeper integration. When performance dissolves, Leo must rediscover identity internally rather than externally. The sun returns to its proper function, not performing for the world, but radiating naturally from within it. When this integration occurs, Leo expression becomes authentic again. All right, so I did miss a section. Who am I when I'm not performing? This stage often produces Leo burnout. Creative expression stops. Social environments feel draining rather than energizing. The individual may withdraw temporarily from visibility because the nervous system can no longer sustain constant identity projection. All right. So the sun returns to its proper function, not performing for the world, but radiating naturally from within. All right, so you're trying to dissolve performance. When this integration occurs, Leo expression becomes authentic again. Recognition is still appreciated, but it is no longer required for identity stability. The individual shines because they are themselves, not because they are performing a version of themselves. All right, so Leo regulates emotional pressure through expression and visibility. Emotion enters the nervous system, expression releases it, recognition stabilizes identity. This system works beautifully when expression is authentic, but if identity becomes tied to external recognition, a distortion begins forming. So that is performance. All right, so the Leo shadow extraction pattern. Man, my nose is being terrible right now. It's the weather. It's freezing. I feel like the temperature just dropped 5 degrees. It's really wild. All right, so the Leo shadow extraction pattern. Validation loops. Every archetype unconsciously extracts a specific form of psychological resource from the environment when its internal containment system weakens. So nervous system, when your nervous system shuts down, you no longer have containment within yourself. Your inner and outer masculine and feminine are freaking out. Your nervous system crashes, and then you go into an extraction, shadow extraction. All right. So in the say where am I at? Environment when it's internal. Okay. So in the moral load architecture, these extraction patterns correspond to the archetype's regulatory mechanism. So we're talking about the nervous system. Each archetype has a different nervous system. Pisces extracts emotional understanding and compassion. Aries extracts stimulation, friction, and momentum. Leo extracts recognition and admiration. Because Leo regulates identity through expression, the nervous system naturally associates recognition with emotional safety. Attention becomes a form of energetic feedback, confirming that the identity being projected exists and matters. This does not begin as manipulation. It is simply how the Leo nervous system processes emotional equilibrium. When expression receives acknowledgement, identity feels stable. When expression is ignored or dismissed, the nervous system begins experiencing a subtle destabilization. The psyche instinctively attempts to correct this imbalance. This is where the validation loop begins forming. If recognition stabilizes identity, then the psyche unconsciously begins increasing behaviors that generate recognition. The individual may intensify their charisma, humor, storytelling, emotional expression, or dramatic presence. They turn into a cat that walks on your computer or tries to lay on your face when you're sleeping. That is what happens when they don't get attention. They will lay on your face while you're sleeping and screw up your project when you're working on your computer. So then you got to get a squirt bottle and say, calm down. I'm just kidding. I've never, ever, maybe a couple times, but All right. So I don't think I've actually ever done that, but I do love cats, so it's a thing. It's a thing. All right, so they become high underwater panther. Hello, where's my cat? Where's my cat? Which way? Why is this so backwards? Oh, there it is. There's my cat sitting on the ledge, ready to pounce. Panther. Yeah, I like cats. We're good. All right, so the individual may intensify their charisma, humor, etc. They become highly engaging socially because engagement restores equilibrium. But if the environment stops responding with recognition, the system escalates further. I need some more lip gloss. All right, so presence becomes more dominant. Emotion becomes more theatrical. The individual may begin unconsciously structuring social environments around themselves in order to maintain the flow of validation. Conversations drift toward Leo narratives. Group attention gradually centers around their presence. The individual becomes the emotional gravity of the room. From their perspective, this feels natural. They're simply expressing themselves, but from the outside, it may appear as attention seeking behavior. This is not because Leo consciously desires control, it is because the nervous system is attempting to restore identity stability. Integration occurs when Leo learns to generate identity stability internally rather than relying exclusively on external recognition. Expression remains vibrant and charismatic, but it no longer serves as compensatory mechanism. I'm sitting here laughing. I'm sorry. FI parent, I'm sorry, but y'all need it's an endless pit of needing emotional, I don't know, attention, validation, petting. You know how cats just want to be pet and pet and pet, and they'll literally let you sit there and pet them for 12 hours straight, depending on the cat. But I'm sorry, FI parent, like they need so much attention. It's a black hole sometimes. They would never admit it because it's sensitive, it's internal. I don't want you to know that. I don't want you to know my sensitivity that I need petted, that I need petted. I sound like my 6-year-old. I need pet for like, petted? Actually, I think that's a word. I don't know, but y'all, it's they would never admit that they need this attention and validation. It's just a thing. So this is not because Leo consciously desires control. They're trying to restore their identity. So recognition becomes appreciation rather than necessity. So that's the goal. So integration occurs when Leo learns to generate identity stability internally. All right, so we already said all that. Got sidetracked. At that stage, Leo presence becomes deeply magnetic because it is no longer extracting energy from the environment. So, like when you are reaching for something and trying to grasp it and cling on to it, whatever you're trying to cling on to will naturally try to run away. And then when you fall back and let something come to you. That's called magnetism. Can you believe it? All right. So it is radiating energy into it. Validation loops. All right. So we're done with that. So yeah, Leo nervous system regulates through visibility. So they can do a lot of dramatic storytelling, exaggerated emotional expressions, dominant social presence, competitive charisma, and performative vulnerability is also a thing. All right, but eventually a question appears quietly underneath all the expression. If I stop performing, who am I? And that question leads to inner masculine. So, FI parent and Pluto, identity forged through truth. This is where Leo stops expressing and starts confronting. Leo does not find identity, Leo forges it. So, this is internal, invisible, but intense. Because FI parent asks, what is true to me, even if no one sees it? And Pluto ensures anything false will eventually collapse. Bum, bum, bum. All right, inner masculine, FI parent and Pluto in exaltation. Yeah, that's Pluto in exaltation. Jeez, like what does that? Pluto is like an atomic bomb. It's tiny but massive. Massively tiny. Identity formation, moral core, and psychological transformation. So Leo does not simply have an identity. Leo is forced to confront identity over and over again. This is not the soft version of identity that people associate with confidence, personality, or self expression. This is not, I like this, I don't like that. This is not surface level self awareness. This is identity under pressure, identity under contradiction, identity under collapse. Leo does not wake up one day and decide who they are. They are broken out of who they are not. And that process is rarely comfortable. It does not feel like clarity at first. It feels like confusion, emotional tension, disorientation, and loss of certainty. An existential crisis is what it actually feels like. That's why they get so on fire, like expressively, emotionally expressive, because it's an existential crisis. All right, because every time Leo attaches to an identity that is not fully aligned, something inside begins to resist it. Not loudly, not immediately, but persistently. There is a slow internal friction that builds, and eventually that friction becomes unbearable. That is when identity begins to crack. And when it cracks, Leo is forced into a process most people try to avoid, letting go of who they thought they were, so something more real can take its place. You think Scorpios are all about transformation, deep transformation? So are Leos. They are not given credit for that at all. So if I parent internal authority, I'm going to take another drink just in case I get another allergy attack. That was wild. All right. So FI parent in Leo is not passive. It is not soft. It is not just how I feel. It is a judge, an internal authority that constantly evaluates. You know, I'm just laughing right now. My grandma's a Leo. Her father's father was actually a judge. And we still have his desk and his like little hammer gavel thing. Yeah, like a legit judge. All right, an internal authority that constantly evaluates alignment versus misalignment, truth versus distortion, and self versus performance. This is why Leo cannot fully escape themselves. Even when they are performing successfully, even when the world is validating them, even when everything looks right externally, there's still a deeper layer inside asking, but is this actually true? And that question is relentless. It does not disappear just because things are working. It does not quiet down because others approve. In fact, sometimes it gets louder because things are working, because success built on misalignment feels hollow. An FI parent knows the difference. This creates a unique psychological tension in Leo. They can succeed externally while feeling internally disconnected. They can be admired while feeling unseen at the deepest level. They can perform identity while knowing it is not fully theirs. And that awareness is what eventually forces change. Pluto in exaltation, the force that won't let you fake it. Pluto, did Leo come up with fake it till you make it? Was that a Leo? Who was that? It had to have been. I'm just playing. Just playing, y'all. Just playing. So Pluto does not care about comfort. It does not care about timing, and it definitely does not care about how attached you are to your current identity. Pluto is the force that says if it's not real, it's not staying. And when Pluto is fused with identity, FI parent, this becomes unavoidable. Leo cannot indefinitely live in a false or misaligned identity. They can try, they can maintain it for years, they can build a life around it, but eventually Pluto applies pressure. And that pressure shows up as internal dissatisfaction that won't go away, emotional intensity that does not make sense, situations that expose cracks in identity, Relationships that force deeper truth. Interesting. I have always attracted Leo risings or Leo midheavens. Like, it's a thing. And I'm an Aquarius Mercury. I don't know if it's that. That's very interesting. Relationships that force a deeper truth. Yeah. Like heavy Pluto, Scorpio, and Leo. I can see why they would be attracted to my Aquarian mind. For sure. All right, so I just did a video about that. My prior video, awesome, off the cuff, bridge video, awesome video, comparing the fixed signs, talking about Uranus and the fixed signs. Hilarious how this works. All right, so this is why Leo experiences identity in cycles rather than in a straight line. They don't just evolve gradually, they transform in waves. Each wave looks like attachment, pressure, collapse, truth, reconstruction. And every time this happens, identity becomes more refined, more real, more aligned, but also more stripped down. Because Pluto removes everything unnecessary, everything performative, everything false, until what remains is undeniable. So this creates two identities, the one that works and the one that is real. And Leo feels the gap, even when no one else does. So instead of refining identity, Leo begins defending it because losing identity feels like losing everything. So then Pluto hits and life hits with loss, exposure, failure, and identity crisis. And Leo feels everything I thought I was is gone. Pluto doesn't destroy Leo, it reveals what was never real. So the internal experience, God, this is such a good song. I love this song. I haven't heard it in forever. I've got a playlist that's like 300 songs deep, and I just put it on shuffle. Some songs I never hear forever. It's just, I love this song. All right. So Pluto doesn't destroy Leo. It reveals what was never real. So the internal experience, the lived reality here. Living as Leo internally often feels like carrying two layers at once. The outer layer, expressive, confident, visible, and engaging. And the inner layer, questioning, evaluating, sensing misalignment, and searching for truth. These two layers don't always match. And when they don't, Leo feels it immediately. And even if they cannot articulate it yet. So it shows up as a subtle discomfort in their own expression, a feeling that something is off, emotional reactions that seem disproportionate, a need to pull back and reassess. This is FI parent doing its job. It is constantly scanning for is this aligned with who I actually am? When Leo listens to this, they become incredibly grounded. And when they ignore it, the tension builds. And eventually that tension forces a reckoning. All right, so the core split, true self versus performed self, is what they're dealing with. All right, so Souther's Leo may look consistent, confident, and stable, but internally there can be two parallel identities running. Yep. All right. So this is where thoughts begin to form. Like, I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't know who I am without this role. I feel like I'm playing a version of me. That is not weakness. That is awareness. This is the moment where Leo is being invited to collapse the false and return to the real. So pride as protection. Pride in Leo is often misunderstood. It is not just arrogance. It is not just ego. It is a defense mechanism around identity stability. When identity is not fully anchored internally, Leo begins to protect whatever version of identity they currently have, because losing it feels like losing self entirely. So instead of allowing identity to be questioned, they defend it, they reinforce it, they double down on it. This is where you see resistance to feedback, difficulty admitting misalignment, emotional reactions when identity is challenged, rejection of perspectives that threaten self image. But underneath all of that is a much more vulnerable truth. If this isn't who I am, then who am I? That question is terrifying without inner grounding. So pride steps in to stabilize what is unstable. All right, so the male Leo here in the inner masculine. So for Leo men, this layer often activates later, but when it does, it hits hard because they often spend years building identity externally through career, status, recognition, and role. And when FI and Pluto activates, it begins questioning all of it, not externally, but internally. This creates a phase where Leo men may feel disconnected from what they built, uncertain about who they are beyond their role, frustrated by success that doesn't feel fulfilling, pulled towards something deeper but undefined. This is where many either evolve into grounded leaders or double down on performance and stay stuck. The ones who evolve are the ones willing to lose identity to find truth. All right, so female Leo, inner masculine for them. For Leo women, this layer often shows up earlier emotionally, but becomes more complex relationally. Because their identity is often reflected back through relationships, social perception, emotional dynamics. So the tension becomes who I am versus how I am received. This creates a deep internal process of emotional truth checking, identity refinement, questioning authenticity in relationships, and learning to separate self from reflection. When integrated, this creates one of the most powerful archetypes. A woman who is emotionally sovereign, expressive without dependence, deeply aligned internally, and stable regardless of external validation. And when not integrated, identity becomes fluid based on environment, performative. Kind of reminds me of Marilyn Monroe. I'm going to have to Google her. I don't know what she is. Emotional instability increases, validation becomes regulation, and self concept shifts constantly. So, age progression for the inner masculine. So, this process is not optional. It unfolds whether Leo is aware of it or not. But awareness determines whether it becomes transformation or repeated cycles. So, the 20s and 30s are especially critical. So, the hero so the outer masculine, SE hero and sun, normally is developed between 1 and 12. The parent 12 through 20, give or take. Child, let's see, wait, 1 through 12, 12 through 20, 20 through 30, 35, inferior 35 plus. So that's ballpark. So the 20s and 30s are especially critical because this is when identity built externally begins to be tested. Excuse me. Internal truth becomes louder, misalignment becomes harder to ignore. This is the phase where Leo either aligns inward or reinforces outward identity and delays the process. But Pluto always comes back. So this is where Leo becomes what it was always meant to be, not a performer, not a personality, not an entertainer, but a stable center of identity. And the way there is not through more, and that way, okay, where am I at? But a stable center of identity. So it is through radical honesty with self. Leo must be willing to say, sorry, I'm turned up the music and this is like hitting hard. So, radical honesty with self. Leo must be willing to say, this isn't me anymore. This was never really me. I built this to survive, not to be true, and then let it go. Even when it hurts, even when it costs you visibility, even when it means starting over, because what you gain is something far more powerful. Identity that does not require maintenance. Identity that does not depend on audience. Identity that does not collapse under pressure. I have my fan on. I don't know why. I'm turning that off. That's part of my problem. All right. So anyways, all right. So outer masculine ask, am I being seen? Inner masculine ask, is this even real? And when those two questions collide, Leo reaches a breaking point because visibility without truth becomes exhausting, and truth without structure cannot sustain reality. So the next step becomes necessary because once Leo finds identity internally, they must learn how to build it into the real world. And that leads to the outer feminine with extroverted or TE child, Saturn, and Uranus, where identity becomes structured, executed, and tested in reality. Gosh, this thing is not folding like I'd like it to. All right, so structured, executed, and tested in reality. So now Leo knows who they are, or at least they're closer, but there's still a problem because identity means nothing if it can't survive reality. So this is where everything becomes real. Identity tested in reality with T child, Saturn, and Uranus. Identity is not real until it works in reality. Leo now asks, can I actually build a life around this? This is where many struggle. So this is the child function. You're not good at your child function. T child tries but does not. It's really hard to master your child function. Child and inferior are more unconscious to ourselves, and so we are not as aware of these functions as we are the hero and the parent. So we are diving into the deeper layers of, I don't exactly want to say unconscious, but it's there. It's certainly there. So Saturn steps in and says, do it consistently. Not once, not when it feels good, but over time. Uranus disrupts it. So Leo lives in tension, structure versus freedom, consistency versus reinvention. So Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus. And that also have extroverted thinking. So Leo does not feel comfortable. They feel left field with Uranus, Saturn, and TE type of things. They are left field in their outer feminine. All right. So Leo feels, I know who I am, but I can't make it work. So this is where life falls apart practically: inconsistency, instability, and unfinished cycles. Potential identity is not power, sustained identity is. All right, so identity by itself is not enough. It can feel real, it can feel powerful, it can even feel complete internally. But until identity can withstand reality, it is still fragile. This is a stage where Leo moves from this is who I am to can this version of me actually function, build, and survive in the real world? Because reality does not respond to identity alone. Reality responds to consistency, structure, execution, and consequence. This is where many identities fail. not because they are false, but because they are unsupported. Outer feminine is where identity is forced out of imagination, emotion, and expression and into time, systems, responsibility, and results. This is where Leo learns something that changes everything. So it is not enough to feel like yourself. You must be able to live as yourself. And living as yourself requires structure. So, TE child experimenting with reality. TE child is not confident control, it is curious control. It doesn't say, I know how to build this. It says, let me try to build this. And that creates a very distinctive pattern in Leo's life. They don't wait until everything makes sense. They move first, they try things, they test ideas in real time. They organize imperfectly. They lead while still learning. So yeah, they certainly this is where they can be higher risk takers. Aquarius, on the other hand, they prefer to have everything planned out. They have more OCD issues, organizing, planning and planning and planning. Leo, on the other hand, they will jump before they look. They can be very high risk, risky people. So they lead while still learning. This gives Leo a natural ability to initiate projects, step into leadership roles early, take visible responsibility, and learn through direct experience. But it also means they often overestimate readiness, underestimate structure, rely on energy instead of systems. Energy or charisma. Or chit chat. TE child builds through trial, feedback, and adjustment, not through planning, certainty, and execution here. This is why Leo's path looks messy from the outside, but internally it is how they learn what actually works. Saturn, the point where identity gets real. Saturn is where identity meets reality's boundaries, and reality does not negotiate. It does not care how strongly Leo feels about who they are. It asks one question: can you sustain this? This is where Leo experiences friction for the first time in a grounded way. Because Saturn introduces time delays, effort requirements, repeated responsibility, and consequences for inconsistency. This is where Leo learns expression is easy, consistency is hard. And that gap is where identity either stabilizes or collapses. Saturn exposes every weak point in identity structure: lack of discipline, lack of follow through, dependence on motivation, avoidance of responsibility. This is why Leo often feels pressure here, because Saturn forces them to confront: am I actually living what I say I am? Not occasionally, not when it feels good, but consistently. Uranus, the force that refuses stagnation. Just as Leo begins stabilizing through Saturn, Uranus enters and disrupts everything. Because Leo is not meant to become static. They are not meant to become rigid in systems. They are meant to remain alive, evolving, and expressing. Oh, I just went up way too far. Give me a moment. All right, so Uranus introduces sudden redirection, unexpected change, creative breakthroughs, and collapse of outdated structures. This creates a paradox inside Leo. They need structure, but they also need freedom. They need consistency, but they also need evolution. So their life often unfolds like this: build structure, outgrow structure, break structure, rebuild something more aligned, over and over again. This is not failure. This is evolution under tension. So, internal experience, the push pull state. This quadrant does not feel calm. Outer feminine. So, they are pushing this out into your face. And it does not feel calm. Oh my God. It feels like pressure mixed with resistance. Leo begins to feel the weight of reality. I need to make this work. I need to stabilize my life. I need to prove this is real. But at the same time, I don't want to lose myself in responsibility. I don't want to become rigid or trapped. I still want to feel free and expressive. So now we know why Leo is number 8 on the moral load bearer ranking system. You know. So internally, Leo experiences a split between discipline and identity. Part of them wants to lock in and build, another part resists being confined. If they lean too far into freedom, chaos. If they lean too far into structure, loss of self. The balance is extremely precise, and it must be learned through experience. So, distortion when this quadrant breaks. This is one of the most defining failure points in the Leo system because here identity either becomes real or unstable. So, chaotic expression, I can't hold it. In this distortion, Leo has identity but no structure to support it. They start things with intensity, they show up strongly, they create momentum, but they cannot maintain it. This leads to cycles of starting and stopping, bursts of energy followed by collapse, frustration with lack of results, identity that feels real but unstable. This is where Leo feels, why can't I make this stick? And the answer is structure has not been developed yet. So, over control, I lost myself building this. In the opposite distortion, Leo overcorrects. They become highly structured, highly disciplined, highly controlled, but in doing so, they disconnect from their natural identity. Life becomes obligation, routine, and pressure instead of expression, creativity, and radiance. This leads to burnout, emotional numbness, loss of inspiration, and quiet dissatisfaction. Because Leo has built something, but it no longer feels like them. So, collapse pattern when reality doesn't hold. When this quadrant collapses, it is not dramatic at first. It is subtle, it shows up in results. Things stop working, consistency breaks down, structures fail, opportunities don't sustain. And Leo begins to feel something deeply frustrating. I know who I am, but my life does not reflect it. This is one of the hardest phases for Leo because the identity is there, the clarity is there, but reality is not cooperating. This is where many either develop structure or fall into cycles of reinvention. So male Leo with their outer feminine, this quadrant determines whether a Leo man becomes a force in reality or a presence without substance, because charisma alone will only take him so far. At some point, reality demands results. The men who integrate this quadrant follow through, build systems, create consistency, and lead with structure. The ones who don't rely on presence, avoid discipline, struggle with long-term stability, and burnout in cycles. This is where respect is earned, not through personality, through sustained action. Female Leo with their outer feminine. For Leo women, this quadrant becomes grounding identity into life. This is where emotional expression becomes lived stability. When integrated, life becomes organized around identity. Creativity becomes consistent. Emotional expression becomes structured. Independence strengthens. When not, life feels unstable. Direction shifts frequently. Identity feels disconnected from reality, and progress resets repeatedly. The internal frustration becomes, I know who I am. Why can't I stabilize it? So, age progression, full developmental arc. This quadrant matures slowly because it requires real world pressure, not theory, not insight, experience, failure, and repetition, and time. Most Leos don't master this until their 30s or later because this is where Saturn fully activates. Hello, Saturn return. So, integration, the real formula. So, the integration here is not about becoming rigid, it is about becoming reliable without losing identity. Leo must learn consistency without burnout, discipline without self loss, structure without rigidity, and evolution without destruction. The formula becomes alive: express, structure, sustain, and evolve. And when this is integrated, Leo becomes powerful in reality. Not just expressive, not just authentic, but effective. Banana. Efficiency. All right, so final truth here. The outer masculine says, I can be seen. Inner masculine says, I know who I am. Outer feminine must prove I can live this every day in reality. And this is where identity becomes undeniable. But even now, something is incomplete because Leo can now express, define, build, and sustain, but there's still something missing: meaning, foresight, and long-term awareness. Because without reflection, Leo risks repeating the same cycles again. And this is where the final layer emerges. Inner feminine with introverted intuition, or NI, inferior, Neptune and Mercury in fall, where Leo must finally slow down, detach from identity, and face what lies beneath all of it. All right, so this is the hardest one. One question remains: where is all of this going? All right, so this is where everything slows down, the collapse of identity. This is where Leo can no longer perform. So the experience is no expression, no building, no identity reinforcement, only awareness. Leo begins to see patterns with NI activation, not moments, patterns, and realizes I've been repeating myself. Neptune dissolution. Then identity softens, blurs, shifts. Leo feels I don't know who I am right now. So final collapse, this is the deepest point: being no one. Most escape here. They go back to performance. But if they stay, this is not identity loss. This is identity purification. So the inner feminine, reflection, meaning, illusion, and long-term truth. This is where Leo can no longer perform. This is where identity stops working. This is where expression, structure, leadership, and even authenticity are no longer enough, because this quadrant asks a question that none of the others can answer. Where is all of this going? What does this actually mean? Who are you when everything you built is stripped away? This is not a comfortable layer. This is not an active layer. This is a stillness layer. And for Leo, whose entire system is built on movement, expression, and visibility, stillness feels unnatural. So this won't start kicking in until you're probably 30 or 35, give or take. So, yeah. That's why I laugh at Saturn return, because it literally means your inferior cognitive function is being activated. I felt it when I was 29 hardcore. All right, so this can feel threatening and unnatural for Leo, because in stillness, there is nothing to perform, nothing to maintain, nothing to project, only awareness. So NI inferior, the function Leo avoids but needs. NI is not about action. It is not about expression. It is not even about identity. NI is about pattern recognition over time, long-term trajectory, meaning beneath experience. It asks questions like, what pattern am I repeating? Where does this path actually lead? What is the deeper truth behind my behavior? It's a very holistic function, in my opinion. But they do have TE, so, and they're concrete by nature. All about the facts, though. Hopefully. Actually, Scorpio and Leo are the ones that are like facts, 100% facts, and they are actually the most, like, they're like basing their reality on their emotions mostly. So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. All right, so facts over emotions. All right, so okay, so for Leo, this function sits in the inferior position, which means it is both underdeveloped and extremely powerful. When ignored, it creates blind spots. When integrated, it creates wisdom. So, Neptune, illusion, projection, and dissolution. Neptune adds another layer, and this is where things get complex because Neptune blurs boundaries. It creates idealization, fantasy, projection, and emotional distortion. For Leo, this often shows up as confusion between who they are and who they imagine themselves to be, or who others see them as. Neptune can create inflated identity visions, savior or hero narratives, unrealistic self concepts, emotional attachment to illusion, grandeur. But it can also create deep imagination, symbolic awareness, artistic vision, and spiritual depth. So, this quadrant is not just about truth, it is about separating truth from illusion. And I think, honestly, this is where they get their musical. They're normally very artistic and musical. They love performance arts, the imagination, vision, and creation. Certainly Neptune and I and Mercury. All right, so Mercury in fall, slow reflection, internal noise. Mercury in this position does not process quickly. It does not organize thoughts cleanly. Instead, it creates looping thoughts, delayed clarity, difficulty articulating inner experience, internal noise before insight. Wow, I'm actually going to sit on this. I'm probably going to make another video comparing Leo and Pisces with Mercury and maybe a few others. Mercury is in left field for Pisces or the INFJ, and Mercury is in fall for Leo. That to me needs to be a whole nother video. All right, so this is why Leos often. Okay, so where was I? I don't want to miss this. So it does not organize thoughts cleanly. All right, so they have looping thoughts, delayed clarity, difficulty articulating inner experience, and internal noise before insight. So they are extremely expressive, but they still have difficulty articulating their inner experience. It's normally for the dramatic effect. So this is why Leo often struggles with fully understanding themselves in real time. Wow. All right, so I'm just having a thought. Geminis are the babies of the air signs, and they literally talk just to talk. And you would never know that because they're so good. They're ruled by Mercury. They're so good at talking that they can talk to whoever about anything, and you would think that you would think that you're having a deep conversation with Gemini, when in all reality to them it is literally to hear themselves talk. They're not emotionally connected deep like that. And it's just, I don't know where I was going with that. Gemini's talk to talk. Okay, and Leos, they are doing that in the emotional realm. They're expressing their emotions, but not the real. It's more performative rather than what's actually going on internally. So it's kind of like the same ordeal. It's probably a horrible analogy, but that just clicked for me. All right, so storing that away in my freaking filing cabinet. My mind is the Library of Alexandria. Between my mind, my computer, my phone, my notes, my books, like, yeah, that's being notated and I'll never forget it. It's logged. It is now logged. All right, so they may feel something deeply, but not be able to explain it yet. They may sense something is wrong, but not know exactly what. Clarity comes later, after time, after reflection, after stillness. So the internal experience, the void state. When this quadrant activates, Leo enters a state that feels very unfamiliar. It is not active, it is not expressive, it is not structured, it feels like nothing. Or more accurately, everything without definition. This can feel like loss of identity, emotional confusion, existential questioning, detachment from previous self. Leo may feel like I don't know who I am right now. And that is exactly the point, because this is the phase where identity is no longer being expressed or built. It is being observed. All right, so the distortion here, illusion versus truth. This is the most dangerous distortion in this quadrant, because it does not look like distortion, it looks like belief. Leo may believe this is who I am, this is my purpose, this is where I'm going. But without reflection, those beliefs may be projections. Neptune can create entire identity narratives that feel real, but are not grounded. This leads to being a princess. Waiting for your Prince Charming. this is where you're sitting on your swing set when you're a little girl, having fantasies about your Prince Charming walking up on a horse while you're wearing the most prettiest dress in the entire world. This is where your fantasies are coming from. Your princess king fantasies. You're the king. Well, you know, there is such a thing as an emperor. So watch out. You and your water in your spray bottle. All right. Anyway, stop huffing. Stop sniffing the catnip, Leo. Like, you need to get out of your fantasy world. All right. Anywho, you always land on your feet, though, right? Tactical. You got it. So Neptune can create entire identity narratives that feel real, but are not grounded. This leads to chasing illusions, repeating emotional cycles, building identities that eventually collapse. Collapse the true reset. The real collapse happens when even that fails. So when identity no longer stabilizes, meaning feels unclear, you're having an existential crisis, direction dissolves, expression feels empty. This is the moment where Leo cannot be someone anymore and instead must face being no one. Take the mask off. This is the most uncomfortable state in the entire system. It is also the most powerful because here nothing false can survive. All right, so male Leo breakdown of control. For men, this phase often feels like loss of control over identity. They may experience loss of direction, questioning of purpose, disconnection from previous ambition, silence where there was once drive. If resisted, they double down on performance, chase stronger identity roles, avoid stillness. If integrated, they develop quiet confidence, long-term clarity, internal stability not dependent on role, and presence without force. Female Leo, dissolution of image. For women, this phase often feels like loss of image coherence. They may experience detachment from how they are perceived, questioning of self-image, emotional sensitivity to illusion, and shifts in identity expression. Are y'all mirror hogs? I would bet $50 y'all are mirror hogs. I think you are actually the worst mirror hog. Like Pisces, INFJs, and Aquarians, INTJs are like mirroraholics. And I inferior, I am guessing that y'all are even worse. I want to take a poll. I don't think y'all will be honest. I just don't think y'all will be honest about. Are you a mirroraholic? I truly want to know. Let me know. There ain't nothing wrong. There ain't nothing wrong. All right. So for women, this phase often feels like loss of image coherence. If you're not a mirroraholic, you're a hairsprayaholic. I'm just playing. All right. So they may experience detachment from how they are perceived, questioning of self-image, emotional sensitivity to illusion, shifts in identity expression. If distorted, they attach to idealized identities, drift between versions of self, become emotionally disoriented. If integrated, they develop deep intuitive grounding. Identity becomes fluid but real. Expression becomes aligned with truth, not perception. All right, so age progression, the awakening window. This quadrant often activates when identity has already failed at least once. This is key. It usually appears late 20s, first identity cracks, 30s, major restructuring, and 40 plus, deep integration or avoidance pattern solidifies. This is why many Leos feel, I was confident before, but now I'm questioning everything. Because before identity worked, now truth is being introduced. So integration, the stillness practice. This is the most non-Leo instruction possible. Stop. Not forever, but long enough to see. Chill out for a moment. Just chill out. Chill. Leo must learn to observe without reacting, feel without expressing, question without answering immediately, allow clarity to unfold naturally. This builds temporal awareness, the ability to see patterns, cycles, consequences, and meaning. So the final truth, we have outer masculine, I am seen. Inner masculine, I know who I am. Outer feminine, I can live this. Inner feminine, but is this actually true over time? So when all four quadrants integrate, Leo becomes expressive with the SC and Sun, authentic, FI and Pluto, structured, TE, Saturn and Uranus, and aware with NI, Neptune, and Mercury. Now identity is real, stable, effective, and meaningful. Leo does not just express identity. Leo is forced to create it, test it, live it, question it, and ultimately become it. And that's why Leo is misunderstood, because what looks like confidence is actually a lifelong process of becoming real. Wow, I think that was amazing. I honestly put a lot of time and effort into this. What am I at? I still have energy. So I'm going to take the inner and outer key card down. And I want to go over Leo male and Leo female psychology a little bit more, and then go into how to love a Leo. All right. So Leo male psychology. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. So Leo men often express identity through visible leadership and personal authority, because many cultures associate masculinity with confidence, direction, and dominance. Leo males frequently gravitate toward environments where identity can be displayed publicly. They may be drawn towards leadership roles, entrepreneurship, creative performance, sports, entertainment, or any domain where personal presence and confidence are rewarded. Recognition reinforces identity stability, which naturally encourages them to continue expressing those traits. When healthy, Leo men become inspirational leaders. Actually, give me one moment. I'm going to be upset if I don't do this now. For some reason, like if you have a phone cover on your phone, I've got to be careful with how close I put these to the edges. All right, there we go. Sorry, I just had a moment. All right. So recognition reinforces identity stability, which naturally encourages them to continue expressing those traits. When healthy, Leo men become inspirational leaders. Their confidence motivates others. Their charisma energizes teams. They often act as catalysts for collective momentum because their belief in themselves encourages others to believe in possibilities as well. However, distortion can occur if identity becomes tied to status or admiration rather than internal values. Criticism may feel like a threat to identity itself rather than simple feedback. Because the sun represents the center of self definition, attacks on competence or character can feel intensely personal. When recognition disappears suddenly, such as career disruption, social rejection, or loss of status, Leo men may experience identity destabilization. Without external confirmation, the internal structure must rebuild itself. Integration occurs when Leo men anchor identity in personal values and authenticity rather than public recognition. At that stage, leadership becomes more grounded. Confidence remains strong, but it no longer depends on applause. So now I'm going to move to Leo female psychology. I have to take a drink. All right, so Leo female psychology. Leo women often express identity through emotional radiance and relational charisma rather than purely hierarchical leadership. Their presence tends to energize social environments. People naturally gravitate towards their warmth, humor, creativity, and expressive vitality. Totally. Recognition in this context often arrives through admiration, appreciation, and emotional connection rather than formal status. Friends may describe Leo women as magnetic, uplifting, or inspiring. Their energy elevates group environments because their emotional radiance encourages others to feel more alive. However, distortion can occur when identity becomes tied to being admired or adored. The individual may begin feeling pressure to maintain a charismatic persona constantly. Social environments become stages where identity must be performed rather than spaces where authenticity can relax. Integration occurs when Leo women recognize that their value does not depend on constant admiration. When identity stabilizes internally, their radiance becomes effortless rather than performative. They stop trying to be seen and simply become visible. So, how to love a Leo. Understanding Leo relationships requires understanding how their nervous system processes identity stability. Leo does not merely enjoy recognition in relationships. Recognition is one of the primary ways their psyche experiences emotional safety. When Leo expresses something personal, a creative idea, a story, a vulnerability, or a vision, they are not simply sharing information. They are projecting identity outward. When that projection is acknowledged, the nervous system relaxes. When it is ignored or dismissed, internal pressure builds. Because of this, one of the most powerful ways to love a Leo is simply to see them clearly. Recognition does not need to be exaggerated, praise, or constant admiration. What Leo needs most is authentic acknowledgement of who they are and what they contribute. Partners who appreciate Leo creativity, encourage their expression, and acknowledge their efforts create an environment where Leo identity feels safe to exist. However, Leo also carries an important developmental responsibility within relationships. They must learn that identity does not require constant validation. Healthy Leo relationships involve a balance between expression and authenticity. The partner does not simply applaud the performance, they connect with the person beneath the performance. When Leo feels truly seen rather than merely admired, their loyalty becomes extraordinary. They defend their partners fiercely. They uplift their loved ones with enthusiasm. They bring warmth, creativity, and emotional vitality into relationships. An integrated Leo becomes one of the most generous partners in the archetypal system. Because once identity is secure internally, Leo no longer needs the spotlight. They become the sun that warms everyone around them. Yay, I made it. Almost 2 hours. All right, so that is all I have for Leo. I finally got the inner and outer masculine and feminine. Integration completed. I am ready to move on to the next archetype. I think that's oh goodness. So, actually I'm going to bring this up again. All right, so Leo number 4, most masculine. Number 8 for the moral load bearing. All right, so we're moving into Libra next and then Sagittarius. So that's all right. All right, so Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Gemini. After I get this video series done, it will probably take me another 2 weeks at least. I have been working on this for a month now. It is absolutely wild to me. Wild. So in another couple of weeks, hopefully, I will have the entire video series completed, and then I will probably take a week off to take a break and work on editing my book that is probably going to be 700 pages at least, maybe 800. So I will try to chop that down as much as I can. I highly doubt I can get it to 500 pages, but we will see. Anyways, look out for that. That will be available hopefully within the month. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to write your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Feel free to share this with your friends and family. And yeah, take care, y'all. I will see you in the next video.